Cedar Falls is at the same time.
Oh, sure. Hey, Les.
Thank you.
Oh, I never thought about that.
Should I kill the screensaver before the?
Yeah,
So how do we?
that makes sense. Just minimize quickly.
Is it under person rights?
No, it's good. Good evening. I'd like to call the regular board meeting of the Waterloo Community Schools Board of Directors to order and ask that you join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. And will you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I didn't have a chance to ask any board member who would like to read the mission statement tonight. So is anyone brave enough to read it off the cuff? Thank you, Lyle. Appreciate that.
The Waterloo Schools community commits to a comprehensive system of education and support to assure that each and every student will graduate prepared for college, career, and citizenship, as evidenced by continuing education, pursuing a career path, and contributing to a community.
Thanks, Lyle. The next item on our agenda then is the public hearing for the 2018-19 budget. And at this time, I would like to open the public hearing, and it is 6:05. And ask that anyone here this evening who wishes to address the board on the topic of the 2018-2019 budget, please come forward, state your name and address. All right, then seeing none, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Thank you, Jesse. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, India.
Second.
And this does require a roll call vote, so I will start with India.
Yes.
Thank you. And Jesse?
Yes.
And Sue?
Yes.
And Rhonda? Thank you. And Aster? And Lyle?
Yes.
And chair votes aye. The hearing is closed. So thank you for that. The next item on our agenda is our board celebration of Why Waterloo Schools. And Dr. Annette Duncan is here this evening with us, and I would ask that she come forward. This is a great piece that we get to do to start our board meetings off and hear a little bit about why you've chosen to work here in the Waterloo Schools. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Lindeman and members of the board. I'm Annette Duncan, and I have been with our great district for 29 years. I've worked since 1989. I've had the opportunity to work at Edison, Roosevelt, McKinstry, Grant, Cunningham, Lincoln, and now Lowell, where I'm currently the literacy coach and a district curriculum leader for literacy. Dr. Bev Smith asked me to speak tonight about why Waterloo, and thank you for the honor to address the board tonight, Dr. Smith. Why I chose Waterloo and why I continue to choose Waterloo can be summed up in one word: leadership. John C. Maxwell, an author and international leadership trainer, once said that a leader is one who goes the way, shows the way, and knows the way. My 29-year journey in Waterloo has been paved by strong leaders who have done just that on a daily basis. Please allow me this rare opportunity to do some serious name dropping for my Why Waterloo Schools reflection. Dr. Bev Smith was one of my first principals. She's better known as my cultural informant. She's the driving force behind promoting cultural competency, giving all students opportunities in Waterloo, endless opportunities in Waterloo. Mrs. Cora Turner, better known as our rock, the one that we can count on to make everything right again whenever we face challenges of all types. Mrs. Liz Crowley, my principal for 11 years, our legend. She's the one who's inspired us all and led by her example. Her strength lives on in each person she's influenced. Dr. Stephanie Mohorn, our turnaround principal. She was the one who first gave me an opportunity to be a leader in our district as a role of instructional coach. And my current principal, Mrs. Carrie Heinzerling, I consider our role model. She's the one who walks the walk, always putting students first, and she teaches me lifelong lessons every day through her integrity and her work ethic. The entire principal, lead teacher, and coach cohort that is in place now, in my 29 years, I have not seen such a strong leadership team that's in place and truly working together to align core values in Waterloo and to align our curricular initiatives. And that entire principal leader coach cohort that is led by Mr. Hanna and Dr. Akwaji Anderson, all of those leaders had their teachers start as outstanding leaders within the classroom first. Dr. McNulty, our visionary, the one who paves the way with the district big rocks. He's built trust among our staffs, and he's allowed those big decisions to be made at the ground level. Dr. Lindeman is our driver, the one who's always willing to walk in everyone's shoes in order to gain perspective and always do what's right for all of Waterloo's stakeholders. Each one of these leaders has in turn mentored others to be leaders, strategically leading them into leadership positions in Waterloo. That's why I choose Waterloo, because here, if you work hard and continue to do what's best for students, you'll find yourself in a leadership position. And you will be following in those great footsteps that I've just mentioned. And speaking of the greats and working hard, the most transformational leaders in our district truly are our teachers and our students. Our passionate, resilient teachers are where the rubber hits the road for academic achievement, for social and emotional development for our students. They are, beyond the shadow of a doubt, the leaders who are the driving force behind everything we stand for in Waterloo. The students are our future in Waterloo, the future leaders, and they are the reason that I come to work every day. I consider this my vocation. It's not my job. The opportunity to watch our students grow into our Waterloo leaders is my why. I've been around long enough now to work with students I once taught, have the children of students I once taught in my school now, and I see students that I once had holding leadership positions across Waterloo. That's why Waterloo is synonymous with leadership, and that's why I continue to proudly choose Waterloo Schools. Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you to Dr. Lindeman and to all members of the board for continuing to lead us down the right path and to choose what's best for Waterloo.
Thank you so much. Very well said. Appreciate that. The next item on our agenda is an item for information only. This is Exhibit C, and this is information regarding our Expo East High and West High commencement dates for 2019. So you'll take notice of those. They are for Expo May 23rd at 2019 at 6 p.m. For East High, May 24th, 2019 at 6 p.m. And for West High School, Tuesday, May 28th, 2019 at 6 p.m. And I would offer that if Dr. McNulty, if there's anything else you want to add, can I just say as a parent of a 2018 grad, it was awesome a year ago when we started this precedent of setting the actual graduation date. I think it's great for families and obviously for our staff in our schools, but I appreciate it especially as a parent that I knew the date well ahead of time, so thank you.
I just want to add, as we did last year, we worked with our building principals to choose the date and to make, and with the calendar, I can say that I'm really assured that this date will be standing. We have plenty of hours built into it to make sure our seniors get their 1,050 hours required to graduate. So again, this is in collaboration with our buildings.
Excellent, thank you.
And just for clarification, this is 19, not 18. So do we have the 18 dates we could reiterate for parents?
Here, I'll give them to you. I think they're on that. Oh, yes. For Expo, it's the 30th of May at 6 p.m. For East High, it's May 31st at 6 p.m. And for West High, it's June 1st at 6 p.m. And those are all 2018. So, yep. And those are on the bottom of our agenda online if anybody can, so. All right. Anything further about those graduation dates? All right, then the next item on our agenda is informations from individuals and delegations. Is there anyone here this evening who wishes to address the board? And if there is, please come forward and state your name and address. All right, well, seeing no one, we will move then to our consent agenda. And this evening, the consent agenda consists of 5 items. The minutes of the March 26th, 2018 regular board meeting, item D. Personnel appointments and adjustments, which is item E. Bills due and bills payable, bills due and payable and bills paid between board meetings, which is item F. The revised 2018-2019 school district calendar, and the amended Waterloo Career Center furniture bid approval for phase 1, which is item H. Are there any items that board members wish to have removed?
Item H, hotel, please.
Item H.
And item G, please.
And item G. So can I get a motion then to put items D, E, and F on the table?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
And then all those in favor of approving items D, E, and F, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. That takes us then to item G, which is on page 19, and this is the revised 2018-2019 school district calendars. And I will get that recommended motion in just a second. That the Board of Education approve the revised 2018-2019 school district calendars.
So moved.
Thank you, Sue. And a second? Second. Thank you, Astor. And discussion?
I was just wondering if Jane or Charles or whoever would be appropriate just to state what the changes were.
Go ahead.
As we noted on the March 26th meeting, that we added those 4 days at the end of the year, and 2 were going to be placeholders. And now with the change in the contract, we're going to reduce those from 4 to 2. And so that would again change just for the staff, not our calendar for the rest of the community.
Great.
Perfect. So just clarifying for the public, the calendar that we approved was perfect the
Yep.
last time, but this,
The only changes were for staff. And it's even the ones that you approved, it had the word tentative because we were 90-some% sure that we weren't going to need those last 2 days at the end. So we put the word tentative just as placeholders, but we were able to finish everything and those removed. So students will still start the same day as in the old calendar. They will still end on May 31. Spring break has not changed. Christmas break or winter break has not changed. Conferences have not changed. So parents and families who have the old calendar, it is exactly the same for them. The only difference is the 2 days placeholder at the end have been removed.
perfect. And then there's I see one snow day makeup,
Yep.
April 22nd. So
And
if
that
we
was
had-
on the last calendar
Right.
too, so, yeah.
So perfect. Thank you.
Thought we
So-
might need one today.
So if this is this dependent on approval of item 11?
It is not,
Okay.
because both calendars meet the hours requirements, so it is not dependent on that, no.
Okay.
Anything further on that amended calendar? Anything? All right, then all those in favor of item G, the revised 2018-2019 school district calendar, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That takes us then to item H, which is the amended Waterloo Career Center furniture bid approval for Phase 1. And the recommended motion, Lyle, do you want to read it or you want me to?
Yeah, I move the Board of Education approve the bid from Story Kenworthy for the all-steel chairs in the amount of $35,025.84, making the total contract cost $270,759.79 for Phase 1 furniture at the Waterloo Career Center.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jesse. And discussion.
I just wonder if someone could expound a little bit more on the comfort, size, and aesthetics that were used in the criteria. I mean, are they really different size?
Yeah.
They really
They
are
really
different
were.
sizes. And I know that we have Kendra here from Structure Architecture who could, I don't have the specs in front of me for the different chairs, but I will tell you that I did sit in both of them and they are significantly, the all-steel chair is significantly larger. It is made for an older student. The other Verco chair that we looked at was more of an elementary size chair. And we really did feel that for our older students that we really needed to put them in chairs that they could fit in.
And I think the addition to that too is we are really hoping that the Waterloo Career Center would have an adult connection. So if we're going to have grown adults, which many of our high school students are the size of grown
Yeah.
adults at that point in time, but being that we wanted to make sure we had an adult function to the chairs, we really decided that it was worth
Okay.
a little bit extra money at this point in time to invest in the right thing that would be functional for not only our students, but for anybody else who would use the center.
Okay.
And I would agree with Shanley on everything. There really truly was a difference. We did test them out with students and there was really,
All right. Thank you.
there really was a difference.
Well, and actually, I mean, this is not good, but with, obesity, and we don't want kids in seats that are uncomfortable, which would deter the way they can learn. So if they can't sit comfortably, I
A
think it's a
roomier
wise
chair was
choice.
just better.
Yeah. Not only the room of it, but even the height of it, it was much more comfortable. The other chair, you almost felt like, and I'm not particularly tall, Dr. Lindemann clearly has me in that
Yeah.
department, and both of us felt like our knees were sort of up
Yeah.
in our, it just was not a good,
Okay.
literally a good fit, so.
Okay.
But to be fiscally responsible, we did look at that because it is significantly cheaper.
Yeah.
That chair itself is cheaper, but, I guess in this case, you get what you pay for and you want, if you're doing it, you might as well do it right from the very beginning in a chair that will fit our needs.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
comfort helps you in class too. If you're not
Yes,
comfortable, you're
without
not
a doubt.
going.
And we did compare to make sure that the bids were actually comparing oranges and oranges, and that, with that being said, the difference was smaller than it was at our last meeting, so.
Right.
Okay. All right.
Anything else on that all-steel chair? All right, then all those in favor of the amended Waterloo Career Center furniture bid approval for Phase 1, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Hi.
And all those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That takes us to item 10, the official turf project at Memorial Stadium, and this is our bid approval. This is item I on page 27. And the recommended motion is that the Board of Education accept the recommendation from RDG Planning and Design in conjunction with the district's middle and high school athletic directors and approve the artificial turf project at Memorial Stadium bid to Mid-America Golf and Landscape as presented for $977,158.
So moved.
Thank you, Jesse. And a second?
Second.
Excellent. And discussion. I know we have Dr. Barney here this evening if people have questions, and Anybody from an RTG? There you are. Sorry, I can't see behind this monitor. Ron's over there. I got two.
And this is the same agenda item that we have discussed on multiple occasions when we brought the project before you. Gosh, I don't know the exact date, but it was, I believe, in February, maybe,
Yes. Yeah.
when we brought the project before you for approval. We did go through quite a few things to talk about why it would be advantageous for us to pursue turf and to make this investment of $977,000. So we talked to some of the things, just to refresh everybody's memory. We talked about the fact that turf really opens up a lot of advantages as far as usage with grass. The wear and tear on it really limits the number of groups that we can use. It actually limits the number of students that we can have on it. So we kind of guard it very, very close. So that, and then there is an upkeep, there is a savings on the upkeep. So you don't, obviously you're not mowing and you're not maintaining it. So the annual upkeep and maintenance is drastically reduced as well. There is some maintenance to this. I've learned that as students kind of slide on the turf, that they actually have to come back at once a year and straighten it out and kind of pull it much like a rug would be in your house. If you continually slid on a rug, it kind of gets bunched up, and so they actually have to come back and straighten it and kind of anchor it back in. But that process once a year is significantly less. And so the usage that we believe we'll be able to get out of this change is really a good thing. Now this is not about keeping up with the Joneses, but I would tell you that we are one of just a couple districts that has not gone this route, and I think there are reasons why that many districts have gone this route. So the bids were definitely favorable. When we looked at this, Michael can share with you, we kind of took put a placeholder in there, and this is actually lower than the placeholder that we had thought it would be. So that's just kind of maybe a recap from some of the past meetings, if that's helpful.
No, and I appreciate that. And I also just want to let our public know that we did receive 4 bids. So I do feel like that was a competitive. I know, Sue, we talked about bids at our last meeting and how many we got. And I was very happy to see that we had 4. And I also just want to talk a little bit about timeline. That this is something that, while we've been talking about it since February, it's going to be a pretty quick turnaround here, because we hope to start in about 3 weeks if there's not snow flying. I think the date of our last meet might be the 19th or the 20th of April, and then we will begin and have work done and secured by the time of our first home football games, which will be the first weekend in September of 2018.
Which happens to be East and West this year.
Yes, it does.
So our first game on turf will be East and West.
Yes. So
No, Dr. Barney, or I'm not sure, is it Jason?
I don't know who's here with RDG.
Oh,
There
okay.
you guys.
If you guys have anything else to add, or maybe
And Sue, you had a question. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
I have a question. What is like the life of a turf? You know, what expected life turf with normal upkeep, normal wear and tear?
Sure, good question. You're guaranteed 8 years with the warranty that AstroTurf will provide. A lot of times, depending on how much continuous use you'll get on it, you can get 10 to 12 to 13 years sometimes.
Okay. Perfect.
Ames is currently in year 8 or 9, and they're not planning on touching or doing anything with it for at least 2 more years before they make the decision on what they're going to do next.
So what will the scheduling process be, and what are all the activities you anticipate?
We obviously anticipate soccer, football. We anticipate some community soccer on there as well. We anticipate the middle school soccer on there, or middle school football on there also. We anticipate youth football, YSF program on there. We know in other communities, actually if you go almost anywhere in Minnesota, they actually dome it and they run stuff all the way until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, renting it throughout the winter season as well. So without a dome, I don't anticipate that issue. But, there is a continuous use. I mean, some places will even, with the dome on there, they'll even use it for indoor hitting practices, golf practices. There's just so many options for that. For our community, initially I foresee a lot of the any of the outdoor youth sports. You can potentially even do softball out there. There's just kind of a wide range of things that you can do throughout the year. Band, I don't know if I hit that, but that's probably, if we want to identify the number one toughest activity for turf, believe it or not, it is the band usage. So that's where it becomes real important to keep track of hours, because it does tie into how often it has to be maintained or groomed, as they call it, based on use.
So is there a master schedule that someone is keeping?
We currently use a master schedule for all facilities in the district, so this obviously would tie on to the master schedule for the facility use as well.
So if someone wants to use it for something, what do they do?
They go through the process. If you go online, actually, to the underneath all of our department heads, you go to athletics. From athletics, you click facility usage, and then from there, there's a facility usage document that has all the classes and all the fee schedules and all those other things that are listed on there. The turf would not. The stadium is currently on there, but obviously the new field is not on there as yet. But the stadium is already on there.
And what period of time will this be unavailable to the public for walking or whatever?
Our kids would have obviously access to the field until approximately 5:30, 6 o'clock. Well, I can't say that right now because with the increased availability before, we didn't have it as an option. We anticipate, for example, that both football teams potentially will want to be on it in the fall for practices. So that may force us to kind of stagger what time folks are going to be on there. So I'll be honest, I don't think we've got a locked-in window of time. We have to figure out what our use is going to be, knowing that we're going to have a wide band has already made it very clear that they want to be able to get on there in the fall. So at this point, what we do know is because it's the hours need to be monitored of use, that it most likely won't be just kind of this wide open, come use it anytime you want. The other problem that you have with it is because it is a turf, not a grass field, you can have issues with metal, earrings, all those kind of things, sunflower seeds. I mean, just a wide range of things that when people are using it at inappropriate times have to be addressed and taken care of.
But the whole stadium will be shut down. For
Come April
20.
yeah, April 19th is the last track meet. April 20th is that Friday, and then that Monday, I'm assuming, is when they'll probably start hauling dirt in and covering. They what they do is they build a bridge across the track, so they can gain access and do the work. So we are very hopeful to be able to get it during preseason, so that we're not showing up on game night, and that'll be the first time they get the opportunity to use it. So this particular company, although it's very hard to anticipate Iowa weather, they actually provided us with a shorter timeline to be able to complete the project. So we anticipate potentially being done with the project a month sooner even than what the other one was. So they gave us basically they're accustomed, they said, of being able to get on at the last day of school and then being ready by the start of football season. So the fact that we're still maintaining our April 20 date makes it very promising to make sure our kids will be able to get on and use it.
Can you?
I'm assuming Lonnie is going to want to run 7-on-7 if it's open in time for him to do it. So I anticipate some usage even this summer yet once it's available.
Can you explain the difference between the Astro, the Mondo, and the Sprint Turf? Is there a difference?
There's slight differences in each one of them, and that's why they would in the bid opening we had them separated into bid alternates. So essentially the main differences are that some of the systems have more turf fibers in it, and if you have more turf fibers, then you have less infill, so less rubber, less sand. The field turf system had less fiber and more infill, where the other three had more fiber in it. As you listen to them, they all will sell you on why they believe theirs is safer than the other. The one we have chosen said they actually talked about, I think, a Michigan State study that said it is most comparable to actual grass as you can get. Their belief is that you should, instead of being locked into the base, that you should stay on top of the field as much as you can. So when you think about your cleats, instead of having them go in deep, they'd rather you stay on top of it and play from there. And it gives you more of that, similar to being on a grass field. When you go to break away, the grass will move for you instead of locking you in. Being a father of a son that broke his leg on a turf field in that capacity, I love that idea because it was a different type of turf than what we're talking about here. And so that is very exciting to know that we have that increased safety mechanism in place.
So it's a different type of shoe?
No, well, what we figured out is that each turf kind of requires something different. My understanding is this will play similar to a grass field, so you'll play with grass cleats on it. Whereas some of them, back for all those of us that played years and years ago, you'd wear flat bottom shoes, then you'd wear soccer shoes. You'd try to find the right shoe to get the right grip on them. And so there's some home field advantage to that of knowing what to be able to use on it.
And what does the turf look like? You see these wild turfs.
It's going to be a bright maroon and orange whole turf, all black.
And it's going to be checkerboard in the end
Checkerboard,
zones, right?
yes.
Okay. Thanks Sharon.
Nice and clean.
So I'm assuming this has been athlete tested, coach approved.
Coaches sat in on the meetings to help give guidance on it, and the athletic director, so head football, soccer, ADs. I'm trying to think who else was all around the table, but went through the process to help identify.
And so it looks like there is a circle in the middle, but is that just there for like soccer?
That's a placeholder for now, though. It is for soccer primarily as a piece, but most fields would have a center logo. But the fact that we have 2 high schools using it without a clear determination of what that common ground would look like. One of the neat things that I'm excited about is Dr. Lindeman is undergoing kind of some other work with the Waterloo Career Center to identify the logo for that. We're continuing to explore what that logo for our connections and our combination of representing both East and West and what that potentially could look like down the line as well. So at this point, it's just a soccer center, but there were lots of ideas, but we couldn't settle on what that final one that would solidly represent Waterloo as a community or East and West together. So
Perfect. Thank you.
I can say, the nice thing about us, you look at, some similar school districts, is that if you're the district with one high school, you have a field like this, similar to say like Clinton, you only get 5 or 4 home games a year on it, varsity home games. So
yes,
our usage
every week,
our usage is going to be higher than a lot of other school districts that have this. And then, I just find it amazing the timing, and we are moving ahead with this project, and we're having probably the worst spring that you could start growing grass for the fall. We're so far behind that, I would sit here and think what the field conditions might be like in the fall because grasses may or may not grow very well this year.
and for those of you that attended the last marching band competition on that field, I have pictures left over if you didn't see it, but our kids actually wore jeans, I believe, to compete on our field, and then they put on their nice whites and went to Valley or Dowling, one of the 2 in Des Moines, to then march on theirs. Meaning they knew how bad this thing was going to get tore up on that day. And so we would still be recovering from that event, and we were still recovering, in all honesty, from football a couple years ago. And so you're right, it would have been a very difficult fall. We would have a whole lot of anxious people wondering how well the field would have recovered. So it's a neat piece. I think you're right on track when you look at every single week we're going to have somebody on that field, and that's different. So.
Okay, just you mentioned that Ames is about in their 8th year as far as their use of turf, and then they will have to decide in a couple years what they're going to do. So is it usually a complete rip-off, or is it maintenance? What is it?
Sure. A good example, we designed Valley Stadium back in 2001, so that's when they placed their first go at the synthetic turf. We replaced that turf in 2010, so they got 9 years out of it. And the system that Valley installed back in 2001 was a really early edition of synthetic turf that was very new at that time. It was called Hummer Turf, and they're no longer in business anymore. So even with that old system, they still got 9 years out of it.
Okay.
So what happens is they put the foundation here, and that's when you look at the bids, that's really the difference between the different companies as they came out. Mm-hmm. It came out on the foundation side, the dirt work side was the less expensive with this particular company. The actual material, there wasn't a whole lot of difference in cost, but the work, there was significant difference. So what they'll do is they'll peel that top layer off, and that foundation's still there, and then go back through. So your replacement cost is quarter to not even a half of what your original was?
When we replaced Valley back in 2010-11, I think the replacement cost was $600,000. They have a bigger field, they don't have a track, so there's a little bit more cost in that. To answer your question as far as how they do it, it's they place the synthetic turf right on top of an aggregate subbase. So when they replace it, they just roll back the old turf, and then they roll back the new roll back on the new turf and stitch it, and it's a pretty simple process.
You don't have to redo their work.
Right. That's right.
So today's replacement cost, if you were to put it in and next year replace it, it would be half.
Potentially.
Let's not hope for that.
No,
Or
when
plan for that.
companies mess up, sometimes they replace it the next year.
No,
That's
no.
on mess
Here,
up.
they probably have a low, do we have a warranty?
Yes, 8 years.
8 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that we talked to them about, was even on the foundation, what types of things. I think they said, they gave us, and obviously, how do you warranty for this? But they said they believe that foundation will be fine 75 to 100 years from now. So when you think about that concept of the foundation work, but how do you put a warranty on for 100 years?
I'll be dead.
For the board and for any of our viewers, one of the alternates that is being accepted tonight is alternate number 3, that talks about taking up to an additional foot of excavation. Could you explain that a little bit, just to make sure everybody understands that that is an alternate and we may or may not need that?
Sure. So when we design the subbase for the synthetic turf system, we rely on feedback from a geotechnical engineer. So Terracon is the geotechnical engineer that completed soil borings within the football field to give us feedback on what the design recommendations for the aggregate type and depth should be underneath the field based on your specific soil conditions on the site. Based on their recommendations, they gave 3 levels of options that could be looked at: a basic level, medium level, and a really high intensive level. The least expensive version was 1 foot of aggregate subbase, which was included in the base bid. The next level was 2 feet of an aggregate subbase, which was included in bid alternate number 3. And that's the level that's recommended for acceptance. The more extreme option that Terracon recommended was 3.5 feet, which is really a lot of rock for that. Yep.
And just wanted to point out a couple nuances that maybe people may have not noticed. Currently, our long jump pit is located here on the wayside where the bleachers are at. That made it very difficult for us to be able to get a true decent sized soccer field in there. So we removed that long jump pit and we placed it in what I think is a really neat area there. There's already a standing or a raised area so you can sit down. So you really have the opportunity to see the athletes running right there in front of you and jumping right there in front of you along that side. And it allows us to run still both ways. And we've requested kind of a strong or state-of-the-art runway there for the long jump. The other piece that I wanted to notice, it will be right
See
here
right there.
on the visitor side,
See that?
right up top.
In
Yep.
that kind of
Many
fashion.
places have stuck them in the end zones, but what that ends up doing, it makes it very difficult for, I don't know if for those of you who've been to the games, our home teams come out and they tend to warm up in that one end zone nearest the locker room. Well, if you we already have the high jump pit here, or the high jump area here, you put that long jump in there, you really lose that opportunity for that warm up area. So we maintain that. Some people will ask the question, well, why isn't east first when you walk in instead of west? What we did is we kind of really thought about the way our field sits. It is representative of the north and southern end of town, north and southern end. And so west, obviously, if you're sitting there looking, would be to your right. West High School is that way, and East High School would be to your north. And so they are geographically located on the map, or on the field, based on where they're located in our community.
And they're alphabetical. Left to right. We read left to right, and they're east. Yeah.
But you're sitting on the visitor side and left would be west.
But they're always geographically correct.
Right.
But from the home side,
Oh,
where you,
home
yeah,
stands,
the home,
where
where
our
our
girls
fans
are.
sit, right.
Except we don't want our visitors to think we don't read left to right.
That's all right. We got it.
I think the Courier article, I think, said 2 inches instead of 1 inch of fill, instead of 2 feet instead of 1
It said
feet.
inches, not feet. So
The article.
the article
In the paper.
yesterday,
That's
they
not
do
your-
they do a
yeah.
preview of what happens in board business, and they said 2 inches, and I thought, I think they mean feet.
The bids would be a little bit less expensive. with 2
Yeah,
inches.
I'd love it if we could just do 2 inches, but it's not gonna happen. So.
I just have a quick question. I know a couple years ago that there was some controversy about the carcinogens in artificial turf, and I know you talked about the aggregate underneath.
Yep.
Could you address that, please?
Yeah, there's been a lot of articles disproving that very article. There was, I think, an NBC report that came out probably 2 years ago. And I think there's articles that come out almost every other month that really disprove that. So that hasn't been found to be true at all. It was associated with the recycled rubber
The little
infill.
pieces
Yeah.
that, yeah.
So there, it's connected back to that concept of obviously being outside with the heat and those kind of pieces. One of the things that we had actually looked at is for those of us that played on the old turf, there was concerns about staph infection, and they actually said one of the greatest things about having a turf that is located outside is it's always being burned up by the sun, and so the
Right,
sun
and frozen.
is the greatest thing to take care of killing staph. So there are a number of those things that can pop out there as worries associated with turfs, but each of those things come back.
Does it need to be treated in any way
Just groomed and cleaned. There'll be one of the pieces of equipment will have a magnet in it, so I'll go through and pull out any metal that gets lost or dropped out there on the field, as well as picking up food, any other items that people should not have out there that end up out there somehow.
Kind of a turf Zamboni. I mean,
Big vacuum cleaner.
big vacuum cleaner.
No,
yeah.
no vacuum cleaner. We'd lose all the base.
Right.
And just, I guess, spinning on that a bit, as far as concussions, you know, you've heard both articles, both ways about the safety of grass versus turf for concussions. Is there, you know, any updated information that would validate one way or the other?
I will let him talk about the science of what it's actually called, but one of the things that the company talks about their 8-year warranty is there's a, and all I have is the way to describe it to me would be if you dropped a ball on something, there's a poundage of pressure of how hard it impacts that surface, and they measure that, and there's like, I think it can be up to a 1.88 or something like that is the number, but they guarantee that it will sit below at a 1.66 for the 8 years of warranty that is there. And so I think that's a huge piece, and that poundage or impact pressure is what is related back to the concussion piece. So I'll let him talk about further about what that is.
He summarized it pretty well. The test that he's referring to is called the GMAX test. So the testing will take place right after installation and before it's being used, and they're required to maintain a certain level of GMAX throughout the warranty of the product.
And the company doesn't get to be, it's a third party measurement of that GMAX. The company doesn't get to tell you, yep, we're good. We have a third party come in and measure that to address that as well. In the area of concussion, though, that is one of those things that regardless of the sport, regardless of the activity, if we're specifically talking about football, specifically talking about soccer, the ground itself will not be the primary source of the concussion as far as that goes, but they do everything they can to kind of give that a certainty that, you know, it's as safe of a field as anything else. And I think that's why those independent studies that come out and say it replicates and mimics ground or real grass versus the other. The other thing that we talked about is this will stay the same all year long. Grass is good for those first 2 weeks of the season. And now we're talking about the potential of deterioration and those kind of things. This won't have that deterioration, whereas grass, if we're talking about that, we know the thickness changes, the mowing, all those pieces can change. This is always going to be consistent. So the safety margin is much clearer with this than it is with real grass.
No holes like Sloan
Yes.
Wallace holes, and then just
And
a
rocks.
question, right? You watch NFL or college, and on some of the turfs, the athletes have like, I wouldn't call them bandages, but you know, protection on their forearms and potentially.
Turf
Is that something that we will need for our athletes?
So this is the awesome part about this particular brand, because again, I still have nice marks I can show you from 20-some years ago. This is actually designed not to be the abrasive cutting kind of grass. It's actually a combination of the
Monofilament slip film fibers.
So it's got these two different fibers in there that are designed to be more a softer, less abrasive piece. And so a lot of those guys, they'll wear them because you literally slide when you have the pieces on there. So this is supposed to be a very much less abrasive than the old turf that most of us play.
So what's the outline of the artificial turf?
It's within the existing track oval.
Okay.
Preserving the existing high jump on the north side.
Yeah.
So all areas in green will be the new turf.
Yep.
Okay.
and it's designed actually to be track friendly as well as soccer friendly. The high jump, the way that we have it currently set up, we jump with the pit here and they run into the pit this way. This is actually set up that if we want to set the pit back up here, you can have that same length of runoff here because it will be a flat, even surface to go from the turf to the track surface.
So would we use this for our home soccer games versus the complex?
Yes. I think on any nights where we're double booked, we'd have to consider what those options are. And we really have been very appreciative of the relationship that Cedar Valley has established with us this year and some opportunities. And so we still want to work with them and vice versa and provide this as an opportunity for them. I think they're even considering potential turf years down the road out there as well. So there's some opportunities to work collaboratively together. But I don't even think we even know, Lyle's question was a great one in regards to what types of groups come in. I think we'll be amazed on the types of folks that will choose this as an option, because obviously in weather like now, you could host a soccer, and a lot of places are hosting soccer tournaments right now. You could come out there and utilize that right now, whereas you can't get on a grass field. You could. But there's something to be said about playing in snow. So there's some options that people will have available and want to secure and utilize. So we do know, I'll add this in there, there was a local semi-pro football team that had a very tough time finding fields to play on. The reason being is the time of window that they want to play on a field is the time that you're trying to grow your grass for your own kids. And so if you let that get beat up all summer, it never has the opportunity to get better. So here's another great opportunity for those type of endeavors to come along as well.
Thanks for all your hard work on this.
Thank you. I just want to echo that as well. As a parent of a child that is in band and one that plays soccer and some of those other things, I'm very excited about the fact that this does, no pun intended, level the playing field for us. And I think we should be very proud of that. And I think that this is the fact that it isn't just for one sport and that it's for multiple disciplines is a huge thing for our district. And I'm so proud. I'm so excited about this. And I guarantee you at some point, I mean, we're going to look back on this and be, as you said, very thankful. I think there's going to be a line out the door to use this facility. So I think it's an excellent opportunity for us.
It becomes a great outdoor classroom as well.
Yes.
And if we think about, since we got our tech fellas back here with us, if we think about the technology capacity of the scoreboard and all those other pieces, we get into that. There's some great media pieces, some great educational components of being able to use that facility additionally for that too.
And it's probably appropriate to also go back and thank the people that built the Memorial Stadium, because that was at a time when the district had no money, and that was all donations.
The PASS committee.
Absolutely.
The PASS committee.
So
I think one of the
that's,
things we may want to consider is all the plaques that were out there from that time from those folks have begun to obviously deteriorate over time. So what would that look like to kind of replace those and bring new life to those as well?
yep.
That would be great. So,
And a grand opening, invite them.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No better place than the East-West
East
game.
and West
Yeah,
game,
East
start
West
the
game,
season.
exactly.
That's right.
We might have to give them some designated
That's
parking.
a-
It gets a little busy out there.
That's a great
Yes.
idea.
It is a great
Special
idea.
recognition.
Tara, did you write that down? Grand opening, East-West game. Mental note, so, all right.
And thank you to the board for moving forward with such a great project and great opportunity for kids and our community.
All right, anything further for Dr. Barney? And thanks for coming up from Des Moines. We sure appreciate it
problem.
very
Thank
much.
you.
So, all right, then all those in favor of the turf project, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. Astor, I didn't mean to cut you off, sorry. No, you're fine, you're great. So, all right, the next item on our agenda then is Exhibit J, and this is the 2018-2019 WEA contract agreement. And the recommended motion is that the Board of Education approve the proposed agreement with the Waterloo Education Association, or WEA, for the 2018-2019 school year.
So moved.
Thank you, Sue. And a second?
Second.
Thanks. I'll let Sue write down whoever. All right. And then discussion. I know Dr. Smith, maybe I should turn this over to you first. Dr. Lindemann, Mr. Coughlin.
Sure.
If you want
Absolutely.
us to talk, we can.
No,
too.
no, no. The recommendation coming before you tonight is a an increase, a salary increase of 4.98%. And we are very aware that that is more than a typical settlement would be, and it certainly is more than what you're going to hear from other, probably likely other neighboring districts or other urban districts. The reason is because we actually, for quite some time, have been looking at trying to extend our teacher hours, and actually even looking at potentially extending the amount of time that our students are here. It will not be significant in hours, but looking at adding 10 minutes onto the student day and some extra time onto the teacher's day. So with that, we have been very, it's not necessarily linked legally, but we really absolutely we were committed to compensating and connecting those two. So the settlement that comes before you is actually a recommendation that comes out of the hours part of it. Was a recommendation that came out of the handbook committees. The handbook committees started meeting in December, and some met a few times, some met a significant number of times, and part of the recommendations that came forward were to look at additional hours. We're running pretty tight right now as far as the amount of time staff was here before kids and after the kids go home, and so this will give us definitely some additional collaboration time, some additional professional development time, additional time with students, and so the compensation is definitely it reflects that amount of time. So,
well, and if I may piggyback on that comment, those are hours that our teachers are working. That's time our teachers are working anyway.
Yeah.
And so
For the most part,
I feel like that's a very value added. We value our staff by making sure that time that they have is they are paid for, and that they are receiving that they have that collaboration time, et cetera. So I think it's really a win-win for everyone on that.
Right. One of the things that I think you bring up a very good point. A lot of times when community or really anybody compares salaries, you had mentioned earlier oranges to oranges, apples to apples. When we look at that, one of the things we had a shorter workday, a required workday. Now that doesn't mean that that's what teachers are working, but a required workday that was shorter than some of the other districts. And so when you compare salaries, you're looking at that. And apples to oranges, you say, well, our teachers work this long and are required to work this long, and any other staff members might be required to work a little bit longer. So this levels it out a little bit, and so the compensation is reflective of that.
Yeah.
So with the public, for public note to know this, when you say extended day, 8 hours, what does that mean in the sense of, they work what now compared to what they may work in the fall?
So for the staff, they would be working a little bit longer on. So it would be an 8-hour day. So they would be having a day that reflects the compensation day of the 8 hours. So it would be different from what it is right now.
Which is
7.5.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, I want to add that because when people hear that right away, they're going to say, well, that means that staff would only work 7.5 hours. That is not accurate. So that's why you heard me hold just a minute. So I want to make sure that I clarify that. So when the required day is not what teachers would necessarily work. Right. I think that we all know that staff members work far more than that, which is where Shanley was going when she was alluding to the fact that many times teaching is not an easy profession. If you're going to do the right thing and to do a good job, it just takes additional hours. And so we knew that our staff were working, far more than the 7.5 hours that were in the contract day. So I want to make sure that I make that connection there. When we say that our staff are contracted for 7.5 hours, I think you'd be hard pressed to find a staff member that is, only working 7.5 hours. That's just what we were compensating for. So now we're moving to an 8-hour compensation day. Yep. Does that make a lot more? That makes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and with that, I think it's showing that we value the extra time that they have been putting into the day. Like Shanley said too, that, before they were kind of giving us the time, and now at least they're going to be compensated for that time. And like you said, to make it a little bit more equitable when you're comparing a salary with someone else. But it also, I think, proves that we listen to our staff with the focus groups and the employees, because with the focus groups, I think it came out loud and clear that they wanted more collaborative time, they wanted more time to work on planning, those types of things, and this will, in a sense, allow that, you know, depending how their day unfolds, but that is listening to their requests and their suggestions and putting it into action. So I really appreciate all the, I guess it was over 120 people that participated in the focus groups, and I just want to thank them all for their time, because this is the result of their time and collaboration. And without that, we would have been dealing with just, you know, what, you know, administrators may have wanted to do with this. And so I do think that the people that were on it, and I heard it was of all different ages and very diverse group of people. And so when we offer them again, I think it's a very good testament that your opinion and your thoughts are valued. So do that again. If you get a chance to be on a focus group and you have an issue that you'd like to have discussed or just give your opinion on, a focus group provides that opportunity, when previously with just a union contract you did not have the opportunity to provide that. So
I think it's an excellent proposed agreement. Many of you know I've been on my soapbox for a while saying, you know, I think we're at a little bit of a competitive disadvantage in our starting salaries. So this particular one brings us, this contract brings us, I think, much better position to attract new teachers. But probably the most important is the groundbreaking process change in terms of soliciting, as Sue was mentioning. Basically, everybody got to throw their input into it, mix it all up, and said, okay, this is what everybody, you know, wants. Everybody feels will be beneficial for students. And I'm sure there was a lot of back and forth on that, but the process is I think significantly improved over past years. So I'm hoping that we're able to continue this process.
I just wanted to add to that I'm pleased, because I was worried, you know, with the legislation that came out of Des Moines in terms of these organizations and how much how much input they would have into it. So I just want to give kudos to the administrators and the WEA, because, you know, a lot of us were kind of concerned how we would work together on that. So that's good stuff.
Yeah, I would, it might help to just give a little anecdotal evidence, I guess. When the legislation changed, I think there were a lot of fears all across the board, as a matter of fact, all across Iowa, of what might happen, and that you know, the comments that I had heard from staff, which I totally understood. You know, we are going to lose our voice. We're not going to be heard. You're going to make top-down unilateral decisions without our input. And I think, honestly, I think Waterloo is an example of a district that did just the opposite. We used that opportunity to hear from even more than we ever would have heard from the other previously. And so we heard from people, we took that input, and I thought I just started jotting, but you know, we had groups working on, you know, giving recommendations on hours, benefits and compensation, calendar, evaluation, leaves of absence, and just really looking at the input. And I was really surprised how many groups had recommendations that were actually related to this change that we're making tonight in lengthening the required day. I think many people appreciated that. We did take the recommendation back to, after we kind of looked at, okay, here's what it would look like operationalized. We took it back to many groups. I would say probably 200 people weighed in looking at what we had, and we heard comments from, you know, actually really almost all positive people saying, I really like it, or I think this is going to sell very well. I think it really values us as professionals. Bevan, Charles, and I were at a meeting one night, and the very first comment when we presented kind of what we were looking at was, I feel like you really heard us. I feel like you listened to, you know, I'm sitting here very much valuing the fact that you listened to us. So I think it was a really good process. We have actually been asked by multiple districts about our process. You know, send us your email that you sent out. What did the invite look like? And we will definitely replicate it. My hunch is we'll have more people the second round because they really feel like their voice was heard, and it wasn't a life sentence. They didn't volunteer and they had to, you know, come 20 times. For some groups, they may have only met twice, and some groups may have met 5 or 6 times, but it really was, I think it definitely paid off. So, thanks.
Well, and I just want to say, as we look at what's happening in our country and other states and what's been going on with our teachers and how they feel valued, et cetera, it does matter. It's very important. And to echo what Lyle said, it doesn't do us any good to not be competitive and to not pay our people well, because we already know we've got a great staff. We have the best and brightest. So we want to continue to keep that talent and keep those people here in our district and keep them here in Iowa, because all of our kids deserve that. So I'm very happy with that. Anything further then? All right, then all those in favor of approving the agreement with the Waterloo Education Association, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. That takes us then to Exhibit K, and Matt O'Brien and Ron Moreland, you've been very patient out there tonight. I will get this motion on the table and then turn it over to your expertise. The Board of Education, I move that the Board of Education approve the purchase of 344 Dell Latitude 5590 laptops, 117 Dell Optiplex 3050 AIO desktops, 2,898 Acer C731 Chromebooks, and 154 Apple iPods at the total cost of $997,058.42. Jeez. Can I get that motion on the table? So moved. Thank you, Sue.
Second.
Thank you, India. And Matt, I'll turn it over to you. You love to give me tongue twisters.
I was just going to comment that I know you love when I toss items on the board agenda just so you can read the motion.
I love it. It's my favorite thing. So,
just for clarification, it's Apple iPads, not iPods.
Oh,
just
excuse me.
Just to make sure, folks, if anyone is listening at home and wondering about that, there's a small difference.
iPads.
No, easy.
Yes.
One little letter makes
Right.
all the difference there.
Right. We're not going to the gym with our earbuds. Yeah. sorry.
So as the board is aware, we have a life cycle replacement model for all of our technology, and those that have been on the board for a while are probably used to me coming around this time of the year with a technology purchase proposal that then we use to phase in over the summer to have ready for next school year. So the proposal tonight includes staff computers at 7 buildings, and it also at the elementary level includes student computers at a little over half of our elementary schools. We're playing a little bit of catch up at our elementary to make sure that our elementary computers are current and functional. So there's a good amount of technology going on at our elementary level, which actually is where all of those iPads are destined amongst Chromebooks and laptops and desktops and other equipment. Additionally, 2 years ago, the board approved a different model for technology distribution at our secondary level. That model basically allocated a Chromebook, which is a lower cost laptop device, to all of our 6th grade students. That last year then was expanded to include all 7th graders. So this current school year is our first year that we've issued Chromebook devices to 6th and 7th graders. And that model change is really about trying to leverage the money that we've always spent on technology replacements in a cost-effective manner to ensure that all of our students and staff have access, ubiquitous access, I would say, to technology resources. And the fact that a Chromebook is a lower cost device allows us to spend not that much more money than we were spending in the past on student technology replacement, and instead give a device to every student so that there's not any necessities for teachers to plan ahead and check out carts or reserve a computer lab or such of that nature if they want to leverage technology or the power of the internet. The technology is just available to be used at any time or not to be used at any time as instruction would see to be appropriate. I do want to emphasize that while this is a technology purchase, we really don't want to view this as a technology initiative. I've said that a number of times in the past. We really do just view this as a tool. That's all technology really is it's a tool that can be leveraged in instruction. So it's not going to make bad instruction magically great, but it has a great potential to make good instruction even that much better. And we've seen some great examples of a lot of our teachers being able to effectively utilize technology in some really cool and innovative ways. And actually, we'll look at that in just a minute. And to that end, actually last year when we took a proposal to you, we had a whole lot of folks here that talked for quite some time on how they've been able to leverage Chromebooks in the classroom at our 6th grade. This year we thought we'd do something a little bit different and give them the night off and at least not monopolize their Monday night again. But instead we have a little bit of a video that we wanted to share with you that looks a little bit at Chromebook use in the classroom. So we'll play that for you, and then after that point, Ron Moreland, our instructional technology coordinator, will talk to you just a little bit about some of the data that we've been looking at. So take a look at this, please.
Welcome to the Waterloo Schools Chromebook Project. The United States Partnership for the 21st Century Skills recently identified what they believe are the most important skills required for the 21st century education. They are communication, critical thinking, collaboration, and creativity. Waterloo teachers are leveraging Chromebooks, the Google suite of apps, and the internet to help students develop these skills. Let's start with communication. Every student and teacher has access to Google Classroom, a place to manage classroom workflow of creating and turning in assignments. The teacher can quickly see who has turned in assignments and who may need a little reminder. And teachers can quickly create announcements, assignments, and even poll questions that instantly go to each student. Or, in some cases, a teacher simply needs to communicate with an individual student or a smaller group of students. In this case, the teacher can click over to the Student tab and select individual students to communicate with. You'll even notice that a teacher can set it up so parents and guardians can get a summary of Google Classroom activity for their students. Some Carver leaders asked the question, what if we assembled a group of adults and students that created a student life website full of daily announcements, birthdays, daily trivia, awards, and just great pictures of things happening at the school? All of this built on Google Slides so that many people can work on it at the same time. That sounds like maybe more than communication. Maybe some collaboration too, but we'll get to that one later. Let's take a look at using our Chromebooks to foster critical thinking. What if we use Google Sound Lab to critically analyze the similarities and differences between different sound waves created by different objects? Or what if we used an interactive timeline to express our understanding of critical events on a research topic? Teachers at Hoover have students keep a reading log in Google Sheets to track the books they've read. What if we teach them a simple equation that will automatically tally their fiction and nonfiction reading? And what if students use the power of Google Sheets to create a graph to visually represent their reading patterns?
That was for Jane.
And this leads us right into the heart and soul of Google Apps, collaboration. Teachers often put students in collaboration groups where they give feedback to each other. With Google Docs, it's so easy to comment on someone's document. In our reading log, students can look at each other's reading list and make recommendations. And a collaborative dialogue can continue. And these students aren't even in the same building. Bunger teachers asked the question, what if we collaborate between the literacy and social studies departments? They read the refugee book, and groups of students worked together to research and create multimedia presentations on the various global refugees. And what if the students presented to each other and other teachers what they learned? Sounds great, right? Well, we're not done. Bunger teachers asked the question, what if the author of the refugee book came to our school? Finally, one of my favorites, the powerful skill of creativity. Students can explore rhythms and intervals using Google's Sound Lab. Congratulations to the Carver Hip Hop Literacy Group for winning my Name This Song contest. It shall forever be called Beat a Boop. Students can creatively represent their learning in fresh ways, like this research website. There are literally hundreds of sites where students can remix and represent their learning in creative new ways using drawing, images, video, and audio. This new model of distributing technology to students is truly a team effort. We want to thank all the teachers and staff that help with the logistics, like handing out devices, fixing them, and coaching students on the careful and safe use of the Chromebooks, and the never-ending quest to find new ways to push our Waterloo students toward those important 4 C's.
Thank you, Waterloo Schools!
Right. So my name is Ron Moreland. I'm the instructional technology dude, or as Dr. Smith would say, tech boy, and for the Waterloo Schools. And so I also get to celebrate with you the research component of our project. Virtually every school in Iowa through the AEA takes this pretty rigorous assessment for students and teachers. They go through it. The building's kind of dreaded a little bit because it's not just a 10-question thing. It really drills into the kinds of activities you're doing, the frequency of those activities, and so it really tries to get at this gives you a CASE number, and CASE stands for Classroom, Access, Skills, and Environment. So let me walk you through the celebration here. So we've done this 2 years in a row. Super proud of this particular statistic in that you'll notice, first of all, that our very year one, we were already proficient on the CASE score. And this next year, we moved ourselves into the advanced category. And so I think that's a huge thing. I will say that as you drill into this website, into the data, you can compare almost down to the question level to the rest of the state, and we consistently score above state averages.
So what's the population base on this?
So this would be, well, first year, that's a great question because this actually is 6th grade team. So what I'm really watching, we actually gave it to 7th grade too, and I don't have that data with you, but with me. But what we could say about this particular chart is that though we are looking at different students, theoretically we're looking at the 6th grade team. So I'm super proud of this because each student, both years, would have been brand new to the project. But we saw growth, and that means that our staff really contributed to that growth, which is awesome.
So this is a 1 year to the next?
Yes. So there's kind of like a 4 or 5 month span that we gave the assessment at the beginning of 2016 and then the beginning of this 2017.
Two different students or the same students?
Well, in this particular graph is actually 2 different sets of students, but the same adults. I can actually blend all of our scores together as well. I just wanted to show that our overall scores increased. Let me break this down even more for you. Super proud of this too. Let's look at, first of all, let's look at the diamond, which is access. I think we can really celebrate Matt and the tech department in that we are exemplary according to their research in terms of access and infrastructure and downtime and all those kind of things. Okay. The next thing that we should be really proud of is our skills. our staff and student skills score in the advanced category. And I think zooming back out on this particular graph, I think it's worth noting that nowhere on this chart do we see beginning or emerging scores on any of the categories. I think that's phenomenal. I'm going to jump down to our classroom. You'll see that we are proficient in our classroom environments, but let's look at where we really saw our growth this last school year, which is our environment. So let me break down what the components in their research are for the environment. First of all, they call them the 3 Ps: policies, procedures, and practices. So frequency of technology discussions. Of course, when every kid has a device, we talk a lot more about it and we start learning and growing. Teacher and student ability to take mobile devices home, which has been the case from the beginning of the project, and school device and internet access policies. So the next component of environment is support. So again, props to our technology department. We're scoring extremely high in the quality of tech support, the speed of tech support, and we're super proud. Matt and I have had a dream of a student-run help desk for a long time, and it's kind of in its infancy stages. So we have a couple interns from the Career Center that have been helping with Chromebook repairs as well as some co-ops. So that is starting to move along. We're excited about that. Professional learning is part of environment, teacher ed tech professional development, and then teacher interest in educational topics, technology, PD topics. And this is another one, belief systems, student and teacher beliefs about the power of technology in learning and education, and then student perceptions of the obstacles to technology use. So that's where we really showed our gains. So as we continue through the project, where we really want to focus in on is that classroom. So how can we translate the environment growth that we've gotten and our access and our skills and really start executing well in those 4 C's in the classroom. So just kind of give you a dipstick. If you have any interest in diving way deep into that data, I mean, it's really deep. I could certainly sit down with you, but that's just kind of a celebration through the data of the 2 years that we've collected.
So which students take the Chromebooks home?
6th and 7th grade students take Chromebooks home.
And what's been our shrinkage experience or damage experience on those?
Mm-hmm. Thought that question might come up, so I actually pulled that over the weekend. So if we look across the district this year, so basically as of this weekend for this school year, and look at what I call the instance of some sort of breakage as monitored by, if there is breakage, then there's typically fees that get logged for the parts for that breakage. So if we look at that, then across the district, our average is right around 15%, ranging from 10 to 20%, depending on the school. I would say that that's right in line with what we've heard from other UEN districts or Urban Education Network districts that have been at this longer than we have. They've typically experienced by the end of the year somewhere in the 20 to 30% neighborhood, and again, we're somewhere between 10 and 20% at our schools right now.
Percent of Chromebooks that need some sort of attention?
So attention as far as breakage, you mean? Yeah, so that's ranging from between 10 and 20%. Average across the district is 15.
And what's the average cost of repair?
I don't have the average cost. I can tell you it's probably somewhere in the $30, $40 neighborhood. The other piece of that where it's maybe not completely fair just to say an average cost is we offer an optional program to our parents, which we call our cooperative loss program. So if parents choose to, they can contribute $25 to a fund at the beginning of the year, really any time during the year. And then if their child were to break their Chromebook, as long as it wasn't completely malicious, then the costs that would be charged are lower, roughly 40% of the cost that would otherwise be paid. So the average cost of repair would be depending on whether you're actually factoring in that program or not. We've actually had roughly about 27% of our parents that have opted to participate in that program this year.
And what's the life of the Chromebook?
We're looking at 3 to 4 years. Obviously, this is a little new. We're just now in the district getting at around the 4-year-old neighborhood for Chromebooks that we've had in the district, but that's a little bit different because that wasn't a take-home model. That was just Chromebook usage in the classroom. And the reality is the more you move technology, the more wear and tear that it has. So we're quite honestly looking at, this year the proposal is to expand the Chromebook take-home model to include 8th and 9th, which is basically 6th through 9th grade. Intention being, and this would come back to the board for approval prior to adoption, but the intention being that we would eventually look at all secondary students, which would be 6th through 12th grade. So if you kind of do the math there, you're looking at 7 grade levels. So we'll probably look at a refresh somewhere in the middle, whether that's, at 9th grade or 10th grade. There's kind of some pros and cons to both of those, but basically looking at a 3 to 4 year lifespan.
So the student would be issued a Chromebook and then keep that same device 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th?
Correct. 6th, 7th, and 8th, we'll see kind of what happens, whether that right year to make that transition is 9th or 10th grade. The advantage to doing it at the 9th grade would be that it's kind of a fresh start for high school. The downside to that is that means that by the time they get to be seniors, they have a 4-year-old device, which you might want a little bit of a newer device for seniors, so we'll kind of see how that breaks out. But yes, the device that they're issued is their device. So for example, this year our 7th graders are using the same device that they were issued at the 6th grade level, and that will continue.
How does that work if they switch schools? Does it matter?
That's actually a great question, and that's something where we've been responsive to some teacher and administrative feedback and actually changed that this year. We started off keeping them at the school, so if a student, for example, left Central to go to Carver, they would actually turn it into Central and then get a different Chromebook at Carver. Some of the feedback we got was along the lines of there's an ownership aspect, which is one of the reasons why we felt it was important for the Chromebook to follow the student if they're staying at the same school. So we're actually logistically trying that this year, that the Chromebook, as long as they're staying within the Waterloo schools, would follow them to the new school. So again, they're issued the same Chromebook for their career here at the Waterloo schools.
Okay, so what if they break it in the middle of the semester? I mean, yes. What's the option then? And they don't have one next year, the following year, or what happens?
So we really we consider it to be like a textbook, quite honestly. It's an instructional tool. We wouldn't want to deprive a student of an instructional tool. So in terms of consequences, what we typically would look at is if there was repeated damage or issues, our administrators or teachers would obviously work on a case-by-case basis. They may make some alternate arrangements where maybe that student doesn't actually take the Chromebook home with them. Instead, they check it in and out. We have a number of situations at our middle school where instead of actually taking them home for either parent request or if there's been, just some concerns, then maybe that's an alternate modification that may take place. But in terms of what actually happens with the Chromebook itself, it really depends on the type of breakage that happens. So most parts can be replaced. There's been a few cases where it's either been stolen or it's been completely demolished to the point that it wasn't worth putting in the value of parts in it. In that case, there is actually on the list of potential costs that parents see when they are signing off at the beginning of the year before the student is allowed to take the Chromebook home. There's an option for full Chromebook replacement, which is the cost to the district for a new Chromebook. So in that case, that's a potential charge. Again, if it was an accidental thing and they had opted to take out the cooperative loss program, then that would be offset to only roughly 40% of that cost. But that is a cost that is the part cost cost only, not the labor cost, but the part cost would be potentially charged back. And then obviously, depending on the scenario, whatever part that we would ever charge, that's repaired by staff, either tech staff, or as Ron mentioned, we have some students that work with us on some of those repairs as well. And they would typically get that same Chromebook back unless it needed to be replaced, in which case we have spares to replace it with. Typically, when we're doing those repairs, we have a cart of loaners at the school. So if a child's Chromebook is in for repair, it's not like we necessarily can, repair a motherboard, a major repair within just a few minutes. So typically, it's in the media center that the student could drop off the damaged Chromebook, check out a temporary loaner Chromebook to use until we were able to get their Chromebook repaired and back to them.
How does it affect the students who do not have internet at home?
So that's actually a good point, and that's been something that we've been worried about from the beginning of this, knowing that we do have still a digital divide, and providing kids devices is one component of tackling that digital divide, but internet access is another huge component of that. So there's two pieces that we do with that. The first is actually both Mediacom and CenturyLink, our two prominent internet service providers in this area, offer lower cost internet access for those who qualify. So instead of $40, $50, $60 a month, it's actually $10, $9.95 a month for those who qualify. So that's something that our parents are made known of. We actually give flyers every year when we pass out the contracts that the students and parents sign. We also have a flyer that makes them known of the contact information for those vendors if they want to look at that. We also received a couple of years ago a really generous grant from Sprint, which has given us some hotspots, 250 hotspots that we've been able to check out through our middle schools to those students. So there's actually an application process as well that students can apply for those. We have this year and then 2 more years of service left in that grant. I will say that was a middle school grant, so we are proposing expanding that to the program to high schools this year. So high schools will have just the subsidized or the lower cost internet available to them through CenturyLink and Mediacom, as well as, quite honestly, a lot of Wi-Fi resources, open hotspots at, whether it's a McDonald's or the library, those type of things as well, which we try to promote with folks.
I would just add that chart that we just saw, our access is exemplary, and a lot of those questions ask the kids, do you have access to the internet where you can get assignments done and things? And so kids are marking that, yeah, I do, even if it's not at home. They're finding ways to get access, which is fantastic. They're being resourceful, and a lot of businesses, like you said, have.
And the Sprint grant has definitely helped with that answer too, I think.
Does each school keep track of the insurance piece of it, and who repairs the computers? Do they do it in-house, or are they shipped somewhere?
No, we do it all in-house. So the first question in our student information system, Infinite Campus, we actually keep track of any damage within that, as well as our help desk system. So we actually have a fairly robust kind of internal set of procedures that we use, where tickets logged in our help desk system, and then our help desk staff, before the Chromebook is returned, logs that within Infinite Campus as well. So schools have worked with us, and we have I would say a pretty good process for kind of handling those pieces. I'm sorry, your second question. Oh, repairs in-house. Yeah, all of our repairs are done in-house. So the only cost that's passed back to students is the part cost. We don't charge for labor or anything like that. All of the repairs are either handled by our existing tech staff or are handled by student interns or co-ops that work with our student or with our professional technical staff. We ship a few Chromebooks occasionally back to the manufacturer, but those are only warranty issues. Any of the type of breakage, that type of stuff, we handle in-house.
So if I have a damaged Chromebook as a student, I'm asking for my son. So does he just turn it in to a teacher or a staff member at the school?
Yep.
And then they take it from there? Or?
Exactly. So
Okay.
typically the process would work, and it's very slightly, that very first point of contact very slightly by building, but typically he would report that to teacher. The teacher then typically works with the school's teacher librarian, who is typically the one who actually logs the ticket and gets a Chromebook and also can issue a loaner. You bet.
So just quickly, my dude, Matt, I'm super, that's what I call him, my dude. No, I'm really excited about this. And I know, I was just thinking about the MOOCs, the massive open online courses, and I was wondering if we, and I know you mentioned that this is not a technology initiative, however, we were talking earlier about financial literacy, and it would be really neat to use these Chromebooks with our middle school, with our upcoming 7th graders, and maybe partner with Veridian or some other bank to, for example, Veridian has the Kirby accounts, and we can teach these students through the MOOCs, the massive online open courses.
Sure.
And, maybe at the completion of that, they would get to be able to open a Kirby account. That's just the first thing that pops up into my head, a way that we can use these Chromebooks using a MOOC forum. To teach a concept. And I know also the parent universities, teaching them when they come to parent-teacher conferences about how they can use this technology with their student. So that wasn't a question that you have to answer, but I was just thinking how we could use a MOOC along with the Chromebooks.
I will say that we're in the middle of kind of exploring restructuring our middle school exploratories, and those are exactly the kind of questions that we're asking. Okay, now our kids have these devices. How is our exploratory track going to change to accommodate exactly what you're just talking about?
So were you impressed with that question, Matt?
I was. I was thinking MOOC.
Impressed,
Not
yeah.
many people know that.
Yeah. It's always, techies are typically the ones who throw jargon out there, acronyms out there, so it's always great when a board member throws that back. That's awesome.
Do we keep track who takes them home and how often?
Well, so 6th and 7th grade, the norm is for them to be taken home. So there's exceptions handled in the building, which is kept track of by the building. Like I said, either at a parent request or at a temporary nature, if there's some sort of a need for adjustment or there's concerns about responsibility, that type of thing. But the norm is that they do take them home at the 6th and 7th grade level.
Well, they don't take all their books home.
What's that?
They don't take all their books home.
I can tell you the Chromebook shows up at my house every night.
They may forget their math book, but they will not forget their Chromebook.
No.
That's true.
And that is actually is one of the expectations in the contract that they've signed that says, they're supposed to charge them at home to bring them to school fully charged. Now, of course, that doesn't happen 100% of the time, but that is, an expectation that they're expected to do, assuming they are taking them home.
So the content sites you mentioned, are those Google?
In the video? Yeah.
A lot of them are, but a lot of them aren't. So we leverage all kinds of internet resources. I happen to feature quite a few of the Google ones because they're the ones that come to us free through the Google Suite, the G Suite. But some of the video that you saw were non-Google websites that they're leveraging for different social studies. Or actually, I think a few of them were online tools that come with our textbook adoptions. There's interactive
So
pieces
what's
to
that process to determine what they get access to and what they don't?
From like an internet access filtering type of perspective,
No,
or from a tool?
The content sites that you refer to.
I'll take a stab at answering, and then you can chime in. There's a suite of tools which are fairly standard that our teachers use, which is Ron mentioned and you kind of alluded to as well, which is the Google tools, which is known as G Suite. So a lot of the tools that are mentioned are part of kind of that standard offering that all of our teachers are automatically issued an account for, and all of our students are automatically issued an account for. So obviously those are known and vetted. There's a slew of other resources out there that many of our teachers leverage, and that's it's a little bit of a difficult answer because we kind of walk this fine line between wanting to make sure that we're not stifling teacher-student creativity and putting too many roadblocks in their way, But we also have to worry about compliance with some things and security with some things and copyright and all those things as well. So that's really kind of an educational component, which is an ongoing effort with our teachers of learning what resources that are appropriate to use with our students, whether they're COPA compliant. COPA is the Children's Online Privacy and Protection Act, which has some limitations of what we can do with children 13 and under, of things of that nature. I will also say that Chromebooks, they don't have applications in the true sense of the word, or the traditional sense of the word. In other words, you don't install like Microsoft Office on them, but they do have what are called extensions and apps, which are just like they say, kind of little mini programs that often leverage the internet as well. Those we vet through the district technology office. So while teachers have full reign to be able to install apps on their devices, in terms of Chrome apps, our students only are allowed to install what has been placed on an approved list. So typically if a teacher's wanting to use a new app, they can toss in a help desk ticket, and then we're able to vet that just to make sure that it's appropriate from a security and a COPA or a policy perspective.
I'd take another step. There's this art and science of teaching. So we have the science where we've identified standards and benchmarks that are our objectives. This is where we want to go. And so the teachers, minus the technology, the teachers have had this freedom to kind of masterfully craft activities that address those standards and benchmarks. And so that's kind of the freedom we've given them within the boundaries that Matt just talked about, where the teachers kind of start collecting, they collect tools on the internet to address those standards and benchmarks that we're trying to get them kids to.
So there's a menu they can search on any particular area, and
we usually point them to PLN, Professional Learning Networks, and so Google Networks have like, hey, I'm a Google teacher and I'm a social studies teacher. Here's just they share and create ideas, just like they would collaborate with the teacher across the hall. It's kind of just this virtual collaboration. So to answer your question, I've collected a set of kind of go-to ones that I often point. I have a little website that has them, but as soon as you archive it, it changes. How things on the internet, they come and go, but I do have a set of go-to apps and websites that I have teachers go to based on their particular subject.
It would be impossible and impractical for us to have a definitive list of resources. And that's because, like I said earlier, really the power of having a device in every student's hand is allowing teachers to leverage the power of the internet. And the really cool thing, at least from my perspective, is when a teacher finds something that I didn't even know about from just a particular ed tech site or some sort of resource that they've used, and they're actually leveraging that in their instruction. That's really cool to watch. Some of our teachers are super creative, whether they're finding them themselves, quite honestly, just a Google search, or as Ron mentioned, a PLN, a personal learning network that a lot of our teachers are plugged into, whether that's on social media, like on Twitter with hashtags, or various other methods. They're doing some really cool stuff.
I guess my concern is that if you're talking about the internet, there's so much that's inaccurate or biased.
Sure.
How do you each
We would
individual
hope that they would be
teachers
holding those standards and benchmarks that we're trying to address as the target, right? And so, because we have that issue with flip charts, we had the Promethean Planet, and you could go and download flip charts, and what teachers would come back and go, I thought I had this canned lesson, and then there was page 3 was not even accurate. And so we always train them. You've got to kind of curate resources that are what we want them to be to address our standards.
And from a student perspective, I think you do raise a good point as well, that our digital citizenship is an ongoing conversation in our district of of knowing that just because kids know how to use a device, oftentimes students know how to use a device, more than a teacher does. But just because they know how to use a device doesn't necessarily mean that they know how to use it appropriately. So that's an ongoing conversation and something that I think you raise a very valid point that we need to be continuing mindful of, both in our professional development with our staff, but then also in what our staff is communicating with our students and teaching them to critical thinking skills is obviously what this is all about, right? Yeah, exactly. So we've got to get kids to the point where they can have those critical thinking skills to question whether or not a source is actually reliable, because like you said, they found it on the internet, on Wikipedia, whatever that is, doesn't make it fact by any means.
So on a positive note, I talked to a couple of kids about their experiences with these, and one of the things I learned was that these Chromebooks are introducing people to STEM fields who would not normally have thought about science or math, because it's showing them different ways to they have various manipulatives on these Chromebooks. So I just wanted to share that with you and just say that that's a positive thing that I heard about these.
Great
So
to hear.
Go, Sue, go. Okay, I have a couple different questions, all kind of on a different spectrum than this. But first of all, and they're probably pretty easy, most of them, but the old ones, like that we replace, do we go through like a recycling program, or what do we do with the old ones? That was my first question. I'm going to ask you all my questions, and then, then you can answer them. Then secondly, as far as do we experience any issues with homes that the parents, English isn't their first language, so working with what we have home to help the kid with, or even what we're trying to explain to the parents on the computer if it is in a bilingual aspect. And then thirdly, what about security as far as hacks, breaches, with having so many more people on our system opening a corrupt email? Like my company is very, very big on that, opening corrupt emails, and we have to go through training and that type of thing. So have we had security breaches? And those are my three questions.
Okay, wow. So I actually did scribble those down, so I didn't forget them. Your first question on what happens with retired technology. Most of our technology we use to death, so to speak. In fact, literally, a lot of the proposal in front of you that is outside of the Chromebook, which is a lot of what our questions has been centered on, but that's actually just a portion of the technology proposal that's in front of you tonight. A lot of those devices that we're looking at purchasing, those devices that are being replaced will actually be used to keep other devices that are the same model alive within the district. So for example, and that's the power of buying in bulk, we may have 300 of a particular model, we may retire half of those. The half of those that we retired, then we can use for parts to keep the rest of those alive for another school year until we ultimately retire those. And then yes, at that point we have varying recyclers that we work with. We sometimes get a little bit of money back, just kind of depending on the age and the condition of the equipment. But generally by the time we're ready to retire them, it's not like they can be resold. They're just being sold for scrap, basically. Second question with ELL or English language learners or situations where there's potentially language barriers, particularly with parents. I would say that the short answer is yes, but I don't know that it's much different than the rest of our communication strategy with those parents that maybe have a lack of English skills because they're English language learners. We have a robust, I think, set of options available through our ELL department, and you've heard touted, I think, a couple times before, a service that we subscribe to called Language Line. And then actually, I think it was last year when we had some folks come to present to you all. One of the teachers, I think, even touted the Chromebook as being a really good tool to work with her English language learners, students and parents, because of the translation options that are built in. It's certainly not perfect. It's nothing that we would want to, just do an auto translate and then publish off of that. But in a pinch, it's a fantastic tool that is actually kind of added to the broader tool set that we have to communicate with folks. The third question on hacks and breaches. that certainly is the subject that does keep me up at night. That's a concern. To your point specifically about adding devices to our students and whether that kind of adds to, I guess, kind of our target or vulnerability. So there's 2 points that I would make. One is, on a surface level, yes, the more devices you have, technically that's more things that are vulnerable, more pieces to the puzzle, so to speak. You're kind of increasing your vulnerability footprint with a greater number of devices. I will say, though, that Chromebooks in the industry are typically viewed as being a much more secure device than a traditional laptop or desktop. There's a couple of reasons for that. The biggest reason is they auto-update, and they do it fairly well. So we actually have systems and servers in place to push out updates, for example, to all of our Windows computers. But it's not, I would say, as seamless as a Chromebook, which just basically keeps checking in with Google servers, and when there's an update available, it grabs the update. So it's much more instantaneous in terms of patching those security vulnerabilities. Not to say there's not a device on the internet out there that is not vulnerable, but I would say that they're less vulnerable. So certainly security is an issue. I'm more concerned about other security matters than increasing the number of Chromebooks that we have on our network, I guess is what I would say.
It might also be good to remind people that our students are on a walled garden model. So really they can only email teachers and their peers. They're not allowed to get, unless we whitelist it, they're not allowed to get emails from outside of our district. So that actually reduces the email component that you were talking about a little bit.
Because I was just thinking, like, if they had a Google Mail account and somebody is sent an email that's corrupt, then that could be major breach.
Quite honestly, the greater risk with that is amongst our staff, and we're looking at varying opportunities to further educate our staff in that area.
I think we could probably keep you guys here for another half an hour at least. And I mentioned to Dr. Lindeman that maybe this is something that we need to dig a little deeper as a board, and perhaps we could even do a board workshop about technology, because it's clear that we have a lot of questions, and so I appreciate both of you being here and answering them, but I know that I'm going to leave this room and go, I forgot to ask about that. And so just know that we might ask you to come back at some point, or come before us, and so we can even dig a little bit deeper into some of this.
My contact info as well, so feel free to drop me a line if something comes up, or we're happy to do a board workshop as well.
We know how to
Yes.
Yes. And the other thing I just want to say is that this is something that isn't new to us. This is, our not recycling, but what's the word we say? Life cycle replacements is part of our regular scheduled tech stuff. So this is not above and beyond.
Well, in a positive say, I will say, as a parent of a child who's, in her first year using one in full-time in 6th grade, and I mean, she really loves having that.
Yeah.
Great.
That sense of ownership, that sense of, and a real story here. She had a classmate that was struggling, and I thought it was very neat because she's like, bring your Chromebook to a wrestling meet. They went off the cafeteria, and she helped her classmate with her homework assignment during the wrestling meet, and it was just like,
very cool.
And we kind of found out kind of after the fact, but it's kind of like, that's the power of technology, because here they're not even in their home building, but they figure out how to access it and help each other, and
They wouldn't even have to have been in the same room. That's the beauty of
Google.
Yeah.
So, I mean, things
together.
that may not have been able to take place, as easy.
Sure.
So
that's great.
All right, so clearly we're not without questions, but I think we're done. I think we're done. All right, awesome. All right, then all those in favor of approval of the technology purchase, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye. Motion carried. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. The next item on our agenda then are 3 policy changes, and as Tara Thomas comes up forward. Oh, I thought he was turning me off.
He was doing something to me.
I did. Cha-ching. You're all right. And so the recommended motion is that the board approve the following policies: public participation in meetings of the Board of Education, staff use of social networking and other forms of electronic communication, and staff use of district laptop computers and mobile devices.
So moved.
Thank you, Sue. And a second? Second. Great. And with that, I will turn it over to Tara Thomas, our Director of School and Community Relations.
Thank you. This is the second reading, so I don't have anything to add, but will entertain any questions.
Aren't you glad we don't have to do these 3 times?
Was that a prior protocol?
No,
or-
but this,
okay.
the city
Yes,
council
you're
has
right.
to do things
2
3
is
times.
nice.
Yes, so I like that we can do them twice. So, does anybody have any questions for Tara? All right, then seeing none, all those in favor of the board policy changes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. Thank you, Tara.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda this evening then is the 2018-2019 budget certification adoption. We obviously talked about this at our last meeting, and we had a public hearing at the beginning of our meeting here tonight. But the recommended motion is that the Board of Education certify and adopt the 2018-19 budget with maximum expenditures of $185,069,151 and property tax levy rate of 14.57188 as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Jesse. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sue. With that, I know I can turn it over to Michael Coughlin. I really like the fact that you penciled out 5 places after the, I didn't know how to say that in cents. 0.57188 cents.
Yes. That's the requirement of the form.
I know it is, but it's kind of hard to put that in a.
It's kind of like pie. It would go on forever
Right.
if you didn't stop it. So as the motion mentions, the 2 components that is the requirement of the board action is the property tax rate itself and the maximum expenditures of all funds put together. So just a couple of highlights on those things, since we spent an extensive period of time in the details last time looking through all of it. But just to remind you of some of the major points with that, last year's rate was $14.98, so it's gone down 41 cents to $14.57. That's largely in part because of property tax relief through the state formula. It's automatically the increases every year that come on the state supplemental aid, the allowable growth that increases, the state picks up the property tax portion of that. Plus, we also get a property tax break on the reason that we have a low valuation per student, and the state has a plan to try and bring us down closer to the average. Now, just as a note of what's going on with the SAVE Fund right now, they are trying to approve that to 2050, but also take some of that money and put it toward that effort of even more property tax relief to the district. So that's something hopefully that will be coming soon. Just as a reference, 4 years ago, our tax rate was $1.40 higher than it is now. It was $15.97. So we have seen the effect on that. We've also seen changes in the rollback. So we have a lower rollback number this year than we did last year. So it's a combination to a taxpayer, a homeowner. They not only get a lower tax rate, they get a lower rollover percentage. So if they have a $100,000 valuation on their house, instead of paying 56.9%, they're paying 55.6, so 1.3% lower on that, and the rate going down 41 cents. So they're seeing a savings on the property tax. As far as the expenditure side, that is about $20 million higher than last year. That we published, about 163 million, or 185 this year. 10 of that is instruction. And part of that increase was the change in the settlement for the teachers tonight. Part of that will come out of that. And it was intended that way, that we would raise the amount of money that we are contributing toward our staff. So that was a plan. Our as you've seen the last couple of years, our unspent balance has been increasing. This is now addressing that to bring that down, address that to bring that in line and with the goals of the district. So about 10 of that is budget estimates on instruction in the general fund mainly, and the other 10 million is the WCC project that we're paying for. That has increased our expenditures. It was funded by the sales tax revenue bond, but it still does increase our expenditures from last year to this year. So that's the vast majority of the difference of our budget. The other thing that I wanted to mention, that this is the first year in many years that we are levying less dollars as well as a lower tax rate. This is the first year in my memory experience here that we've been under 40 million. 5 years ago we were 42.2, and this year we're 39.6 for all the funds. So we have a lower tax rate, plus we have a lower dollar amount that we are levying to the local taxpayers. So all of those pieces help us out and give us a positive outlook on the financial situation for us and for the taxpayer.
Michael, we keep hearing about the legislative movement toward reducing the amount of backfill.
Yes.
For the legislature, right? Which I think I read is now at about 152 million, and there is a Senate file on there to reduce it to 100 million, 75 million, 50 million, and 25 million by fiscal year 22. What are you hearing about that? And then my other question is that I understand that that would allow districts across Iowa to come back to the board or come back to this table to look at tax rate based on the reduction of backfill dollars from the.
Well, I had the worksheet all done, and I must have pulled it out of the. Actually, in our case, we get about 1.3 million in the CNI backfill. When you reduce that by about 25% over the 4 years, it's about 466,000, if I remember the number right. Well, if that was all pushed back onto taxes, that would be a pretty significant change, but it is not. For schools, it falls back into the formula of the 5.4 plus the state aid. So we really only lose about 130,000. It's only a nickel on our tax rate because the rest of it goes back into the formula. Now, when you're hearing about this, cities and municipalities will take the whole brunt because what they lose, they have to make up. They do not have the formula that we do that applies it back into the formula where the state will take their share up to 87.5 again, and the 540 takes part of that. Right. So in reality, it's a very small change for school districts. And either way, our authority doesn't change. Even if we lost that and didn't replace it, we wouldn't lose our authority. It's more of a cash reserve thing. But in our case, especially if they do it over 4 years, it will probably be a nickel effect every year.
Thank you for answering that.
It just seems like such a convoluted process to me. It seems, I mean, if the intent is to help out the school districts that are have the least valuation per student, it seems like you'd raise the 87.5%. Just take that money on this relief and raise the 87.5% to 92 or whatever the number comes out to be, because that way you're going to help the property poor districts. Well, you will, but you will also help all the other ones too, because everybody has a share up to 87.5.
so that
Yeah.
it's just like giving
Okay.
flat raises. Everybody moves the same distance. But if you're giving the poor value districts a little more help, that compresses the difference.
Is Sioux City that low in valuation? I noticed they're number one in terms of the property tax relief in dollars.
If I remember the ranking, we're like 260th out of 300
I mean,
and some.
the amount of money they get is highest
The amount of money they get, you have to ask me again.
in the property tax relief. The 1.2 million or something you said we get.
We get two different sections of it. Yeah,
Okay.
we were at 1.2, but we're going up to 2 million on that this year.
Yeah.
For
But
the
like
19,
Sioux City's
that's
at
the estimate.
5
It's-
million or something.
It's because we have a low valuation per student, and out of 330 some districts, we're ranked 270 down, 260. So we're in the lower quarter of districts as far as valuation per student. So we do get a bump of tax relief under that formula.
All right, is there anything further for Mr. Coughlin? Excellent news to be able to drop
Well,
that.
I mean, even the Save News is another
Yeah.
component of seeing why that would be valuable, because the amount of money given for tax relief under Save would not only affect the low value, but everybody would
Everybody.
get some.
Right. Which makes it much more palatable for the
Yes.
legislature, because then it's fair across the, you
Yeah.
know, so, excellent. All right, then all those in favor of approving the 2018-19 budget certification and adoption, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Chair votes aye, motion carried. That concludes our action items for this evening, so I'll take that on then to the superintendent's report and turn it over to Dr. Lindeman.
Yeah, I shared several things, but so I just have one thing. You know, with legislative season coming to an end, I want to just say three things about that legislative season. First of all, I do want to thank our legislators. I feel like they work very hard to keep in contact with us. We definitely don't always I mean, I can't think of a year where I've liked all of the legislation and been in support of all the legislation, but I do appreciate. She didn't even move and it just came on. So I do want to thank them for their time and effort. I also, with that, I think comes a caution. We are getting really close to the very end, with April 17th being the last paid day for legislative session, and things really start hopping at this point in time. So I urge everybody to, I know that I will be intensifying my efforts to stay in tune to what happens. This is the time when there's a give and take, and a lot of times bills will be tacked onto things that they're going through. And so I think we all need to stay aware. And if you are legislatively inclined, I would definitely recommend that. And then I think the last thing is just, we were thrilled to host Governor Reynolds and Lieutenant Governor Greg, and I really appreciated having them. I actually went for the entire time at Kingsley, and it was really touching to see the students, and we were trying to talk about the branches of government and listening to them, and it was a neat thing to see them share information about the Leader in Me program. And so I wanted to make sure everybody knew. There are some really great videos out right now. I know that there's actually some more. We had some people doing some footage, and I think there are more videos coming, so I would recommend people to take a look at that.
I was there today, and the kids are still talking about it.
Oh, are they?
They are. They
Okay.
are still talking
Yeah.
about it. So I think it was a great thing. I think they had to have a little training up ahead of time. They kept saying, "We get to meet him," and some of the staff was like, "Actually, we get to meet her, she." So there's a great role modeling there.
Yeah,
so.
one little boy told me, the president's coming, and I said, no. So they knew it was something significant, but not sure exactly. So, learning lesson.
That was great. So, all right, I'm going to start down to, with board comments. I'm going to start down to my right with Lyle.
Nothing.
Okay. And Astor?
Just two things. When I first was elected and I started my board representation, I set out as a goal for myself to visit each one of the schools in the district. I'm halfway there, so I'm getting around to it. But one of the things that I look for when I visit the schools is I would like to see just an everyday schedule of events, nothing special. And I'm seeing a lot of good things in the district, meeting a lot of good people. I do make a point to try to reach out or meet each one of the principals or the head administrators. And then I have a goal of allowing a child to give me the tour and just seeing from their perspective of what do they like, what could be better in their school, just, establishing that relationship with them. So I am seeing a lot of good things in the district. I just wanted to say that. And then I said I was going to remind you all, April 22nd, Sunday, I believe 2:00 at Gallagher Blue Dorn Auditorium. The Spectrum Project will be going on. I know in the past there have been a few children from our district participating in it, and hopefully there'll be quite a few this time. My son participates in it. This is his 4th year, I believe. He was one of the originals. So I'm looking forward to it. It's always a good time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Just briefly, I agree with Jane. I think this is the time of year that taxpayers really need to talk to their state representatives and find out how the legislation that they're voting on will impact the school district. So if you don't know, just ask and find out what's really going on.
Thanks, Rhonda. Sue?
Well, and I just wanted to commend Michael and administration as far as to keeping the budget in line and reducing the rate for the city's portion of the taxes, because that's a huge thing when we have rising costs and we're building a career tech center, and it shows the fiscality of the district and the staff and using our money wisely and doing what's best for kids. So I just appreciate that and good work.
Jesse, go.
So I had the nice opportunity on Friday to visit the Career Center and give a engineering presentation to the Advanced Manufacturing Group. Me and one of my coworkers. So we went as a group. He works in machining. I work in design. So it was kind of fun we did 2 different classes there, and it's good to see just what they're doing in the classroom. The funnest part was sitting down and for a little bit and letting the kids talk to me about what they're doing. They're showing me to work on the screens. They're showing how they're making parts. They're showing me, well, I had to do this because I couldn't get these 2 to fit together, and partake a little of my engineering knowledge to them. Say, well, yeah, sometimes you have this and that, and so it was a very warm experience. Just looking forward to see that program and all the programs that are just continue to grow. So can't say enough about it.
Thanks, Jesse. India?
I don't have anything.
Well, the next time we will be back here for our regularly scheduled meeting is 2 weeks from tonight on April 23rd. I would also like to remind people that the Waterloo Schools Foundation does have their annual breakfast happening that week. It's on Thursday, the 26th of April. It's a great time to come and see what all kinds of great programs and such they have funded and are sponsoring in our schools. If you're interested, you can go to the Waterloo Community Schools Foundation website and you can sign up right then to go. So with that, I think we're finished for the evening, and I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned for the evening. Thank you.